wise man in Italy told AFP. Then there's the matter of none other than Julius Caesar, who came to an untimely end in 44 BCE at the hands of his very own senators. History states, Julius Caesar, the dictator for life of the Roman Empire, is murdered by his own senators at a meeting in a hall next to Pompey's theatre. The conspiracy against Caesar encompassed as many as 60 noblemen, including Caesar's own protégé, Marcus Brutus. Caesar was scheduled to leave Rome to fight in a war on March 18th, and had appointed loyal members of his army to rule the empire in his absence. The Republican senators, already chafing at having to abide by Caesar's decrees, were particularly angry about the prospect of taking orders from Caesar's underlings. Cassius Longinus started the plot against the dictator, quickly getting his brother-in-law Marcus Brutus to join. Caesar should have been well aware that many of the senators hated him, but he dismissed his security force not long before his assassination. Reportedly, Caesar was handed a warning note as he entered the Senate meeting that day, but did not read it. After he entered the hall, Caesar was surrounded by senators holding daggers. Servilius Casca struck the first blow, hitting Caesar in the neck and drawing blood. The other senators all joined in, stabbing him repeatedly about the head. The saga of the secret society of the Gardunia is highly controversial for one specific reason. Historians cannot agree on whether or not it really existed. The story goes that the group had its origins in Spain, and at some unspecified period in the Middle Ages, but probably at some point in the early 1400s, in or around Toledo. The tale continues that the Gardunia was comprised of both former prisoners and escapees who engaged in just about any and all unlawful acts in exchange for money. Assassinations, burglaries, and the destruction of property were always high on the list. Reportedly, the Gardunia existed for more than 4 centuries, with the bulk of its activities undertaken during the Spanish Inquisition, which was established in 1478 and lasted until 1834. On the other hand, there is the research of a pair of Spanish researchers and historians, Hipólito Sánchez and León Arsenal. They dug very deeply into the story of the Gardunia and found that references to the Gardunia did not date back any further than the 1800s, specifically to the pages of a book titled Misterios de la Inquisición Española y otras sociedades secretas de España. It was written by Victor de Ferial and Manuel de Cuendías, and was published in 1850. As a result of their research, Sánchez and Arsenal concluded that in all likelihood, the stories surrounding the Gardunia were far more suited to fiction than to fact. It has long been suggested that the stories of the Gardunia inspired, or even joined forces with at times, the Camorra, an early mafia-like organisation that operated out of southern Italy, and is believed to have come to prominence in the 1600s. However, they may have existed much earlier, possibly as many as 2 centuries earlier. As is the case with so many secret societies, the truth, or lack of, behind the story of the Gardunia remains a mystery. One of the most notorious of all Italian secret societies was the Camorra, a group ultimately absorbed into the much-feared and powerful mafia. The Camorra was one of many bands of criminals that operated out of Naples, Italy during the 1800s. The majority of those bands were loose-knit in nature and, due to their lack of organisational skills, were largely ineffective. In terms of their activities, however, that was most certainly not the case when it came to the Camorra. Although not entirely proven, there are indications that the origins of the Camorra may actually date back as far as the 1400s, albeit in Spain, and before eventually making their stealthy way to Italy. What began as a small and secret society of criminals soon mutated into something very different. They provoked terror and fear among the people of Naples, particularly so when they began to engage in large-scale widespread crimes such as blackmail, robberies, burglaries, extortion, and even ruthless assassinations. The incredible power and influence that the Camorra ultimately wielded led them to infiltrate local law enforcement, the corrupt Bourbon monarchy, and the military. Dirty and deadly deeds that the royals, the army, and politicians may not have wished to have gotten involved in were handled by the Camorra for substantial fees.